Hi, today I'm going to be doing just a quick overview of imaginary numbers in the unit I. So if you've watched Ms. Seiler's video, this is probably all going to make sense to you. If you haven't, then I would watch that first because then some of this might not make sense to you. So as a summary, we know that I equals the square root of -1. So this whole thing is giving us a way to deal with negative numbers underneath the square roots. Then the next thing that we know is that I squared equals -1. Why? Let's review that real quick because I think it's pretty important. So here's our definition. We know that I equals -1. So when we're talking about I squared, we can substitute I with square root of -1. So this is going to say the square root of -1 times the square root of -1, which equals the square root of -1 squared. A square and a square root kill each other, so that just leaves us with what's underneath the radicand, which is -1. So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. Let's take a look at a couple example problems. If we're given something like the square root of -200, and we're told to simplify that, we're just going to use the knowledge that we already have about how to simplify square roots that aren't perfect squares. So that's the first thing that we'll notice. This is not a perfect square. You can't just say, oh, that equals -20 or something like that. So what we have to do is we have to take what's underneath the radicand and break it up into factors. So we have a -1, a 2, and a 100, right? So voila, there's a perfect square. So we'll go ahead and factor that out. We say 10 times the square root of -1 times 2. So now that we've learned how to deal with this, we can factor that out as well. So that leaves us with 10i times the square root of 2. And that's about as much as we can do because that square root of 2, it's not a perfect square. We're not going to be able to do anything with that. So final answer. Awesome. Now let's look at one using some operations. So if we're given the square root, square root of -4 times the square root of -9, we'll go ahead and simplify these separately first. So that's going to be the square roots of -1 times 4 times the square root of -1 times 9. There's our perfect squares right there staring us in the face. So we say 2 times the square root of -1, and then that's multiplied by 3 times the square root of -1, and using what we have learned about the square root of -1s, we're going to say that this simplifies to be 2i times 3i. But we're not done. So we say, multiplying these together, we're going to get a 6i squared. You might be inclined to just leave it like that, but of course that would be incorrect because the I squared equals -1. So this gives us 6 times a -1, which is just going to give us a -6 for our answer. The next thing I wanted to look at, and probably the last thing that I'll do today on here, because I don't want to make it too long, is conjugates, because this gives us an idea for how to FOIL as well as what a conjugate is and why we end up with this form of a conjugate. So we said that a conjugate in the form of a plus bi times a minus bi is going to give us an end result of a squared plus b squared. So let's do an example and we'll see why that's true. So let's do 2 plus 3i times 2 minus 3i and see what happens here. So we're going to FOIL this, first of all. So we're going to have the first is 4. Outer is a negative 6i. Inner is a positive 6i. And then the last is a negative 9i squared. Okay? So I think sometimes people might get a little bit confused with just assuming that those middle terms disappear, but there's why. It's because we have a negative 6 and a positive 6, so that just equals 0 in the middle. So this is going to leave us with 4 minus 9i squared. So step 1, I think, from here is going to be to simplify that 9i squared. So this 9i squared is going to equal 4 minus, and this equals a negative 9. So this is a double negative giving us a positive, so we have 4 plus 9, and that equals 13. So, ta-da, we have an answer. Do me a favor, if you watch this video, please just add a thread onto the discussion that has your name so I can mark you as for an attendance for SL. And if you have any specific problems from the homework as you're going through Maple TA, please post those if you want me to work through them, and I'll go ahead and do that. All right, thanks.